So I want to talk to you about, well, let me give it to you in a definition. The word scale. And this is a very popular word nowadays in business or in church growth, anything like that. And scale basically means to grow, but it has the idea that you have to grow in all aspects, right? So when you think about a ministry growing, it can't just grow in numbers, it has to grow in leadership, it has to grow in staff, it has to grow in resources. The same thing with the church. You don't grow your church if you don't grow your leadership teams, right? So that's basically what scale means. So there's a lot of talk about scale, and we want to talk today about scale and how to make it work, how to make growth work. Anything that isn't growing is sick, right? Like, we're meant to grow. Everything's meant to grow. And so we wanted to address that this morning. So we're going to start with a little video by Jordan Peterson.
There's a law of creative production called the Pareto rule. And the Pareto rule, sometimes you hear it characterized as the 80-20 rule. 20% of your customers will give you 80% of your business. But it's way worse than that. That's just a shorthand version of the law. The actual law is the square root of the number of people involved in an enterprise do half the work. If you have 10 people that work for you, 3 of them do half the work. Now that seems pretty understandable, right? If you have 100, 10 of them do half the work. And if you have 10,000, 100 of them do half the work. And so what that means is that as your enterprise grows, the number of people who are engaging in counterproductive activity scales much faster than the number of people who are being productive.
Okay? The number of people engaged in counterproductive activity. That means, not productive activity, counterproductive activity. Okay? And so people that are doing things that are pulling away from growing in the direction you want rather than growing in the direction you want, okay? Counterproductive. And so what he's talking about is the way that this increases as we scale. All right? So this is the stuff that when you were in high school, you were thinking to yourself, why aren't we learning that? I'm never going to use it in real life. Well, today we're going to use it, okay? Just because we want to understand something, all right? So the Pareto principle and Pareto rule, you've probably heard this if you've studied anything on leadership. You've heard John Maxwell talk about it. You hear a lot of people talk about it. The 80-20 rule. All right, so the 80-20 rule, for example, is Padilla Praise. A few weeks ago, right? What, 3 weeks ago? Something like that. Where there was, how many churches involved in putting on Padilla Praise down in Padilla, do we know? Like 20, 30 churches, okay? And how many of them did the work? 1, right? Does anybody know the name of the church? Victory Sriracha. Wasn't even from Padilla, okay? So Victory Sriracha did 80% of the work, and the other churches did 20% of the work. Maybe not even, right? That's the Pareto rule. That's the Pareto principle. It's the rule of inefficiency. Okay, so you've got an inefficient, I-E-N-C-Y, something like that, inefficiency. And so what happens is that when something grows, it becomes more inefficient, just by nature. But what Jordan Peterson says is that it doesn't remain 80-20. It actually gets worse the bigger that it grows. Okay? The challenge of counterproductive activity gets more and more the more it grows. There was a guy named Joel Mamby who was the CEO of a bunch of different companies in the States. And I saw him on, what's that program? Undercover Boss. Right? And he was the boss, he was the leader of a bunch of theme parks in the States. And so he went undercover as a dishwasher or something like that to discover what's going on in the company. And he made all kinds of discoveries. But he came out of there and he wrote a book He's a Christian, he's a believer, and his book is called Love Works. As a CEO, his idea is that rules don't work, but love works. If you want to motivate people, you have to love them. And so he started that and got a great revelation when he was working for Chevrolet, right? GM in the States. He was the CEO of Chevrolet, and we went in to start his job as the leader of this huge car manufacturing company. He discovered that a lot of the employees would come to shift and they would find a place to hide, and they wouldn't do any work the entire shift. And they would punch out. Anybody ever seen those punch clocks? Yeah, there's one out there. Punch in and out. It means nothing. Right? It might let you know what time you came to work and what time you left, but it doesn't tell you how efficient you were. Doesn't tell you what you accomplished, right? And so we're going to talk about the difference in these two ways that people try to grow. And so Joe Manby discovered that there was actually people sleeping in big cardboard boxes in the Chevrolet factory. And he said, so how do you do that? Well, what do? Do you make a new rule? No sleeping in cardboard boxes? I mean, they already know they're not supposed to be doing that. Okay? It's a mentality. There's something wrong with that. And when you're trying to grow something or scale something, you've got really two options. You can do it by rules, or you can do it by culture, right? And culture involves wisdom and knowing how people think and work and what motivates and what drives us. Rules simply involves don't do this, don't do that. Okay? And rules may keep you at this level of efficiency, but it'll never go beyond that, because people are looking for ways to break rules. When back in the day when we had a whole bunch of little kids, we were living in a house right down here in the corner. We had a little wooden house, and there was 36 of us living in there, and we had a room about this big for our dining room that we'd added on to the outside. And so there's 30-some people in this dining room every day, and I made a big box with all these little cubby holes for all the kids. They could put their toothbrush and their spoon and, you know, their dish and everything in these cubby holes. And so I refused to put rules up. We didn't have any rules posted anywhere in our house. You're going to learn to want to do what's right, right? Not be forced to do what's right and then say, look at how good these kids are. So there was no rules posted. But little kids are breaking rules whether there's rules or not, right? So we got 17 boys and 16 girls, something like that. And our redheaded son, Chris, he was the only little white guy in the whole bunch. And so he had his little cubby hole, and every time he came down to dinner, his spoon would be gone, because one of the other boys lost their spoon and they would take his spoon, right? And he's frustrated. He's like, what are we going to do? You know, he's smaller than all the other boys. And it doesn't matter how much he cries and complains about it, they're going to still take his spoon every time, right? So one day he comes down, sure enough, his spoon's gone. All the boys are sitting there eating. And he says, whoever took my spoon, I sure hope it tastes good, because I let my dog lick it before I put it away. And one of the little boys sitting back there throws the spoon down on the table. Okay? That's the difference between wisdom and rules. All right? Nobody ever touched his spoon again. Because they didn't forget that. I don't know if the dog actually licked it, but knowing Chris, probably did. And he's probably still laughing about it. Okay, so there's this Pareto rule, which is 80-20, but what Jordan Peterson's saying is, he said, what did he say? It's worse than that, right? It's worse than that. Trying to eliminate the counterproductive activity is even worse than the 80-20. And he says because it works on a scale, and the scale is, the actual scale is the square root of whatever number. And so mathematics, right? Get your head on. There we go. And so if you're going to graph inefficiency. Let's say this line here is 100% efficiency. Okay, and this line here is 0% efficiency. Now, if you have some numbers on here, let's say 9 and 16 and 36, and let's go up to all the way up to 10,000. Okay, so what's the square root of 9? 3, right on. Care was there. You were in school, weren't you, Care? So you've got 3 here. You got a point of 3 here and a point of 3 here. You got 1 point. That's your first point. Okay. What's the square root of 16? 4. Okay. So you got a 4 here and a 4 here. Square root of 36 is 6, and it keeps going until you get up here to 10,000, which is way over here somewhere. What's the square root of 10,000? 100. Right? 100 times 100 is 10,000. Okay, so it's way down here. So what happens is you end up with a curve that starts out at about 50-50, and it just continues to slide like this. So the more you grow, the less efficient. So what happens, he's saying, is you've got 10,000 employees in your country, in your company. How many are doing the work? 100. That means there's 9,900 who are doing half the work and 100 doing the other half. Okay? So see how the inefficiency increases over the number of people that you grow to. And so what he's saying is, it's one thing to have an 80-20 rule. Okay, that's not efficient at all. But it's worse than that, because the more you grow, the more inefficient it becomes. Okay, so counterproductive means how many people are being paid, but they're not doing what they're being paid to do. Okay, they're busy doing something else. Name me some counterproductive things. We already talked about one, sleeping in a cardboard box. Okay, what else would be counterproductive if you went to work and did what?
Took long lunch breaks.
What's that?
Long lunch breaks.
Long
Lunch breaks.
Long lunch breaks. Oh yeah, breaks, taking breaks. Too long. Too long. Should we put a sign up? No. It won't help, right? Okay, what else?
Use the computer to look for other jobs.
Yeah, looking elsewhere on the company computer. What else happens on the computer? It can waste a ton of time.
And social media.
Social media. Yeah, scrolling. Right? How many people do you see that have a phone in their hands? Everyone. When we came through immigration, me and Mom came through immigration this last trip, the immigration lady was sitting at her booth with her phone, playing a game on her phone while she's checking us in. And that lady was so rude, like just over the top rude. And she's just a silly woman. Like, how can you do that? You're being paid to do a job and you're playing on and she's so intense on this game that she couldn't care less if I was a terrorist, you know? And then she just barks out orders at you and she's angry that you're there and so on. And then you get through there and there you go. And you're thinking, like, man, that woman has a very sad life. Okay? She is the epitome of counterproductive activity. Okay? So there's games and stuff like that. You guys get the idea. All of these things that people do. So how do you fix this? Especially when you've got this curve that's coming. Now you've got 9,900 people doing half the work because you're so far into growth. And this is what they're doing the other half of their time. And so the question is, how do you fix that? And there's really two ways, two mindsets, two attitudes. that companies will use. One works, one doesn't work. Okay? There's two attitudes that you can use as a leader. One works, one doesn't work. There's two attitudes that you can use in your own life personally. One of them works, and the other one doesn't work. The one that doesn't work is New Year's resolutions, right? That's just putting up more rules, right? I'm going to try harder. Okay, now you can accomplish some things by trying harder, but you'll never win the battle by trying harder. You've got to have some wisdom, right? And wisdom affects culture. Wisdom affects what you believe. Those little boys would never eat that from Chris's spoon again because they believe that dog could have licked it, right? And they'll never forget that because culture comes in a story, not in a rule, right? Okay, to think about that, guys. There's all kinds of examples around our ministry. There's all kinds of examples in your own life. How do we get things done? Okay? I'll use Sonia for an example because she's got tough skin. And then I'm going to use my wife too because she's even tougher. Okay, so last week, Sonia says, we need to make an announcement for work week. And so she writes an announcement, says, everybody show up, on time, bring your boots, bring your whatever. Bring your guns, whatever like that, right? And she says, does this work? I said, why don't we put some vision in there? Here's what's going to happen. Here's what you can expect. You're going to expect some more intense mentoring, some more time together, some more doing some fun projects, accomplishing some things together. To see the difference, right? You put some vision in there, now people are going to, when Mom announced that she wants all of the staff here, she's like, everybody needs to be here because Dad's preaching on Monday. Well, I would have said, I've got a message that's going to really help you with something, right? See the difference? One's culture, one's here's what needs to happen. And so, thanks, girls. We all do it all the time, don't we? Like it's so easy for us just to default to do this, get that done. And the people don't know why they're doing it. And if I don't know why I'm doing it, I'm not going to have any heart. I'm going to be one of the 9,900, right? And half of what I do is going to be half-hearted. I don't really care. So we got to bring it back to the culture, bring it back to what we live, what we believe. Okay, so that's two ways to run your own world. And another one of these that you'll notice is oh, dear Lord, it's Monday. I can't wait for Friday. I mean, just think about it like that. If that's the way you feel about your work, about your school, just quit, man. Right? It's not worth it. You're not going anywhere. You're not accomplishing anything. Can you imagine running a company, running a store or something like that, and the workers come to work and all they don't want to be there. They hate Monday. They love Friday. Like, what kind of attitude is that? And that attitude goes throughout the whole workforce, right? When some people get it, everybody gets it. We hate Mondays. We love Fridays. We're out of here. We hate our job. And we're going to try and do as little as possible and still maintain our paycheck. That is not growth. That's the 9,900 people mindset. And it doesn't happen. The growth comes when you actually say, you know what? I've got something to provide here. I've got something that I can do. I'm excited about coming to work on Monday. Why? Because I'm going to do something that's going to help people. I'm going to do something this is my passion. Man, I went to university and I got a degree for this. And now I hate it? Like, what's the matter with you, right? But a lot of it, that's just catches from the culture. It just catches from the group mentality. We had missionaries here a number of years ago and had a difficult time with the way that we lead the ministry. Because you'll notice that we're not knocking on your door at 6 a.m. saying, get up, right? We expect you to get up, or 5 a.m., 5:30, whatever it is. Okay, 5:29, right? Nobody's knocking on your door, at least not usually. If you're habitually late, somebody's going to find out why. But that's not the way we do it, because it's not helpful. And so these missionaries were like, we don't like the way you lead because you don't tell us what to do. And I'm like, but you came as a missionary with a vision on your heart, with something on your heart, something that you wanted. You came here for a purpose. You wanted to do something. What was it? Well, whatever you tell us to do. No, that's not going to work. I know better. You know, the guy that comes and says, you know, I'm just here to pack your suitcases. I just carry your suitcases for you just to help, just to serve. He's lying. Right? Then you didn't come. Of course, we're going to serve, but we've got a vision too. There's something we want to accomplish in our lives. So I knew that, you know, so anyway, these missionaries, like, the statement was, the official statement was, Al, if you would just tell us what to do, we would know what to do. And I'm like, no, if I just tell you what to do, you're going to be hating Monday and loving Friday. Right? Because then you're free on Friday. And I said, I'm not going to do that. And they actually left the ministry, which is fine, because I'm not going to change the culture because you're demanding to be treated like a child. So when we're talking about growth, let me get down to the punchline here. If we're talking about how to grow and not lose our efficiency to, you know, the square root of the number of people that are working in the ministry or the number of people that are attending our church, how to do that. The key is not to make the organization more efficient, but the key is to make the individual people more efficient. Okay? To make the organization more efficient, you're talking about management. To make the people more efficient, you're talking about culture. And so here's the thing, guys. We cannot grow the ministry. You can't grow the church, you can't grow anything unless the individuals in the ministry or in the church grow. That's where growth really happens. It happens right with you and me. If we're growing, everything else will grow. If we're not growing, it's going to be very inefficient. Inefficiency will increase and eventually it'll fail. That's why there's big companies that don't make any money. They go bankrupt. Small companies that do well, and vice versa. It's not about big or small, it's about the efficiency of the people that are leading and doing the work. Okay? So, two mindsets that you can have, this is what we're talking about. The first one is to force yourself to grow, right? From some outside thing. People telling you what to do. People teaching you what to do, writing it down, trying to follow the plan. Or the second one is by volunteer, a volunteer heart. I talked about volunteers 2 weeks ago, right? Jesus was going to come strong in the day of his strength. His people will be volunteers. That we are people that give our lives to a vision and to a purpose. And that's the one where you grow. Okay? So let me simplify it. If you're trying to grow by developing habits and all those kind of things, those are all helpful. But real growth comes by changing what you believe. Okay? Real growth comes from the inside out. Real growth comes and efficiency comes when you believe what you're supposed to believe, what God wants you to believe about your purpose. Okay? And so if you've got 10,000 people who believe in the vision of the company, they're going to be far more efficient than 10,000 people who believe in the force of management. They're just there to collect a wage, right? So that's how to increase the efficiency overall. To scale everything, we need to scale our own lives. We've got to grow. All right, so either by force or by volunteer. Force doesn't work. Force is these guys here, and they're just looking for ways to break the rules. Right? They're not gonna move. They're not gonna get there. So there's a story in Judges. If you remember Gideon, yeah, he was the guy in the wine press and rose up, became a mighty man of God, and beat the Midianites, and led the nation of Israel to a huge victory. And when he did that, he led the nation of Israel to this huge victory. Then all of the people said, "This is our guy. Let's follow him. He could be our leader. He could be our king." And they wanted to make Gideon the king of Israel. And what did Gideon say? No, God is your king. Okay? The world will use a natural king to try and force you to do what's right. But in God's kingdom, God is your king, and your motivation comes from him, and that's why we do what's right. Right? Because we want to, because we love him. Right? Joel Mamby's book, Love Works. He proved that you could lead huge secular companies through love rather than rules. Pretty fascinating. You can't scale by doing rules that fix things. You can only scale by growing the individuals who serve and work and lead. Okay? So I want to encourage you with that today. Every one of us has a role to play that's obviously very important, or God wouldn't have called you. And particularly for our staff guys and the guys who are doing the work and the leading. When you think about the overall vision, we've got amazing people in this ministry, don't we? Just really, really good people all around. And the way to grow from where we are now is to grow ourselves as individuals. Don't get tired of growing, right? Don't say, oh, this is good enough. It's not good enough. We've got growth. We need to grow some more. If we could talk about how to shift from the 9,900 mentality to the 100 people mentality, that shift takes place when we clarify what it is that we're called to do. And it's not just about what the ministry is called to do, what the business, the company, whatever it's called. It's about what you are called to do. And so the question I would ask is, do you know what you are called to do? And can you tell me what you're called to do? That's different, right? Can you tell the person beside you what you're called to do? In order to grow, guys, we have to have a goal. We have to be led by our purpose. And the purpose is something that you can identify for your own life. A lot of people, they kind of feel what you're called to do because you kind of know what you like. Like, oh man, I just love worship. I just love music. Yeah, okay, but can you put that in some kind of terms that gives you leadership, that shows you what to do next? Because just loving it isn't good enough. It's got to be able to tell you what comes next. That's what growth and scaling is. It's going to tell you what comes next. A few years ago, when we asked ourselves, what is it that we do? What is it? Can you write down for your life what it is that you do? Can you make it plain? Can you make it clear? Right? And we wrote it down. We make leaders. And so that way, everything that we're doing, is this making, no, these don't fit. No. We know exactly what fits under we make leaders heading. And so we know exactly what to do. Now we can grow, we can scale, because we're going to grow in every area. Okay? So Victory Asia, we make leaders. VW, making leaders. Summit, making leaders. 7 weeks in Asia, making leaders. Victory Churches in Thailand, making leaders. Making leaders, making leaders, making leaders. Simple. Simplifies it, right? Anything that isn't making leaders is this inefficiency that we're talking about. And because we've got this in front of us, we make leaders. Now we know how to cut the inefficiency. We're just not interested in it anymore, right? My grandkids, Grandpa, can I see your iPad? Can I use your iPad? Sure. Can you unlock it? Sure. And unlock it, and they go through all my apps and everything. They're like, you don't have one game on here. And I'm like, yeah, no time. Right? I spend a lot of time, on 4 or 5 hours a day on my iPad already. None of it's on games. Right? Why? Because I know, what am I doing? Making leaders. Is games making leaders? Well, if it is, play it. But it's probably not. Right? Is what you watch, is that making leaders? Right? Is what you're spending your time, is what you read, is that making leaders? Is where you go, is that making leaders? Okay? Now, let's bring this home, because the same principle for the organization works for your personal life. Again, if we're going to scale, if we're going to grow, we're not going to grow by organizing things better. We're going to grow by growing personally, by everybody growing personally. So what is the vision for your life? What is it that you can point to and say, no, everything fits under here, and if it doesn't, I'm not doing it? You can see how that would get rid of a lot of inefficiency in your life, right? And so people hesitate to do that. You know why? Because it's such hard work. I promise you guys that if you look seriously about the gifting that God's put on the inside of you, about where he's taken you, what he's done through you in the past, and the dreams and desires of your heart, you can come up with a very clear statement of, this is why I exist. This is what I do. And it's going to change, right? It'll change through time. When Matt and Becky moved to Thailand back in the day, they just got married and they moved to Thailand, Becky's vision statement was to take everything possible off my dad's plate. Because I was the busy guy. Now who's the busy person? Becky. Right? It's on her plate. All the stuff she's doing used to be on my plate, right? But I can't come and go if all that's happening. And now Becky needs it. We're really praying, and there's lots of help already with like her girl band and stuff like that, to take things off her plate. And so, but think about that. What is your the statement and how it might change? For me, if I think about this stage in my life, my goal and my purpose is to influence leaders for growth. Influence Victory Asia leaders for growth. Not only Victory Asia, but other places, because God's given us a wider influence in some other denominations that are looking at what's happening here and say, can you teach us? Can you tell us what's going on? And so for me, I look at that as everything that I do, I need to do it as an influence for you to grow. That's my job. Okay? It's encouragement, it's being there, it's doing whatever, coming and going, stuff like that, pats on the back, hugs, whatever it takes, right? To influence for growth. Okay? So I want you to think about that. How could I write down the vision and the purpose for my life? And is what I've got now, is it pertinent? Is it up to date? Or has there been some changes? Because Becky's vision statement is not taking stuff off Dad's plate anymore. That's already done, right? I'm sure she's got something else going on. You can ask her about it sometime, right? And but think about that. For me, I know that if there's anything comes my way that's not going to influence leaders for growth, it's a no, right? And everything that comes my way that is going to help me influence leaders for growth is a yes. Very simple. Really, really helps, okay? And you can see how we can scale, how we can grow by having a vision statement for our life.